"Oh, my giddy aunt,"
Perry Juke whispered to Lady Beatrice, the Countess of Rossex.
"Luca's actually here."
She followed his gaze across the giant marquee, past the stage, and into the opposite wing.
"Oh my gosh, he's getting ready to go on."
Luca Mazza bounced on his feet just off stage, while a harassed-looking producer attempted to fit a microphone to the collar of his chef jacket. As she put her hand on his shoulder to stop him moving, he raked his unruly brown hair up onto the top of his head, and, wrapping it around his fingers to form a bun, he wound a hair elastic over it to keep it in place.
"He must have made a miraculous recovery, then,"
Lady Beatrice said quietly, turning back to her friend. They had all been convinced Luca, having spent the last 2 days ill in bed, wouldn't be well enough to perform the demonstration this afternoon. Perry nodded, his blonde fringe falling into his eyes. He swept it away.
"Simon will be relieved. He was dreading having to go on stage with Seb if Luca failed to show up. They only had a chance to do one brief run-through earlier."
Tucking her long red hair behind her ears, Lady Beatrice looked back across the tent where Luca was now in deep conversation with Sebastiano Marchetti. She could tell from the way Seb was rubbing his clean-shaven chin with his thumb and forefinger that he wasn't happy. Perhaps he was trying to persuade Luca not to go on stage. Just to Seb's left, Simon Lattimore stood, his hands on demi-clad hips, a frown etched into his tanned forehead as he stared at the two chefs. He must be worried too. Simon turned his head and looked over towards her and Perry. In her peripheral vision, she saw Perry raise his arm and wave at his partner. Simon responded with a grin. Standing on Simon's other side, a slim, blonde woman looked over and frowned. Lady Beatrice recognized her as Fay Mayer, Luca's girlfriend. As Fay returned to staring at her boyfriend, who was now swiveling his torso from side to side, Seb looked up. His blue eyes scanned the wing where she and Perry were standing until he caught Lady Beatrice's eye. Feeling she should give her beau some gesture of support, Lady Beatrice raised her hand and gave him a thumbs up. Seb smiled and blew her a kiss, then resumed talking to Luca. Their conversation ended with Luca clapping his hands together and nodding his head vigorously. With a brief shake of his head, Seb switched on his own microphone and walked onto the stage. A wave of energetic clapping rang around the massive tent. Sebastiano Marchetti broke into a grin. Thank you, grazie, grazie." Shouting to make himself heard above the noise of the greeting, he waved his hands to signal for the audience to stop. Lady Beatrice couldn't help grinning too.
"They really love him,"